Hello, this is Warren Politics channel. My name is Vladislav Novikov. Today we're recording an interview with Yuri Rashkin, host of YouTube channel RashkinReport and local elected official in the state of Wisconsin. Yuri, hello.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Let's start with what everything watching right now. The key question is, will Putin and Zelenskyy actually meet in Turkey? Russia keeps dodging that question.
And dodge is what they must do, because it feels like situation is starting to develop faster than they were anticipating. And at this point, it seems like perspective of Garry Kasparov as the chess grandmaster that he is might be really useful in trying to understand all the different moves that are in this game of speed chess, as Vitaly Portnikov has so aptly described it, that we're dealing with. We're having a lot of moves that need to start making pretty fast, and we're starting to see that Europe is not walking away, and that all of these scenarios that Kremlin and Trump administration had are not panning out. There are problems, and what do you do when there's problems? Well, if you're Trump, you're just trying to find a way to meet with Putin. And so what is happening right here? Well, there's an ultimatum. It almost seems like Zelenskyy is being used as a bait for like Putin to come out, and then Trump can meet him. And it's kind of a little odd, but considering that while Putin and Xi were meeting in Moscow on May 9th, and Donald Trump was clearly feeling left out, he called Zelenskyy to kind of make sure that they were still relevant, and that perhaps in Kremlin they were watching this and they would feel some kind of jealousy that here is Donald Trump speaking to Vladimir Zelenskyy. It's kind of the elementary school, kindergarten kind of dynamic. But it feels a little bit like we can't really ignore it either. Such possibility, it is part of the cake, this baked into cake that we're stuck at looking, if not eating. And Putin is not going to be, is not expected to show up in person in Istanbul. It's not like they're going to defrost him from freezer. He probably is more than likely alive and well hiding behind a long table, but he wouldn't risk it, not because they might arrest him for violations of International Criminal Court, being for kidnapping Ukrainian children. Although, he seems to be kind of cautious about that. It seems like on one hand, it's just International Criminal Court, and Putin is so much bigger, and Putin and Russia is so much more important and bigger than International Criminal Court. But yet we keep seeing how cautious Putin is about traveling to places that at least are supposed to arrest him. So in South Africa and so on. So it's an interesting part of the equation, but hardly the deciding one, because to think that Erdogan is going to say, aha, we're going to use this as an opportunity to capture Putin and put him on international trial is a sweet one. But at the same time, a little hard to imagine that Erdogan is going to use this opportunity to do this. On the other hand, Putin seems to be losing some initiative here, because now he's responding. He's not the leader, he's the response. And perhaps on this level, he needs to somehow ratchet things up. I think he should just invite Zelenskyy to Moscow. I mean, come on, so what about you? Because this is a very Gopnik or Gopnik style of force projection. And Putin seems to be losing at this moment, not because he's playing so poorly, but because his teammate, Donald Trump, is kind of showing to be himself a greedy, impatient teammate who can't execute a strategy slowly. And he has to just ram himself into every wall. And then Putin is kind of like walking behind going, well, I don't know, I guess, maybe not. Seems like Putin, maybe Donald is overdoing it a little bit. Well, sort of, because, they are going in the same direction here of world dominance, trying to divide the world into spheres of influence. And hey, on that note, Erdogan might have his vision of how that boundary where that should go through as well. So maybe they should, invite invite Erdogan, we're seeing this negotiation instead of see. So it's international dynamics which are interesting to observe, only in the sense that to kind of get perspective of how these are real people who are trying to address their own needs, and every one of them has their own interests, and trying to look at this from everybody's perspective, which in a way is what I'm trying to attempt to do in order to just try to kind of understand their motivations and where they're coming from, can be almost overwhelming, I feel like, sometimes for the listener. But reality is that Putin has his priorities, Erdogan his priorities, Trump has his, even though they seem to be aligning quite closely with Putin, but not entirely either. So understanding all of this, I think, is important, and seeing that Putin is not going to risk it and show up himself, and he's basically losing initiative. So whatever he does, he's going to be responding and showing his weakness. I think it's important to acknowledge that. Because all too often we see how Putin is showing his strength, but I think it's important to see here that he is responding. And whether he's going to send Dmitriev or Ushakov or any number of his mean nothing, do nothing people, because we're dealing with authoritarian states, which means Putin decides, and what they're trying to build right now, not we, but they're trying to build in the United States a dynamic of authoritarian state where also the top leader is the only one who makes decisions. It's almost mirroring each other in the sense that Ukraine might send Zelenskyy, but it really doesn't mean too much, because if people of Ukraine reject what Zelenskyy agrees to, then it's meaningless. The fact that he showed up himself. But on the other hand, unless Trump or Putin show up themselves at an event like this, there's no value to it, because we know they don't keep their agreements anyway. So what's the point of even negotiating with somebody who is not them? This seems kind of a waste of time, which is a lot of what this peace negotiation process has honestly been all about. It's just a waste of time. And this is a waste of time trying to destroy successfully a strong relationship between the United States and Ukraine, to kind of like damage it really thoroughly. And at the same time, appear to attempt to build this bridge in the sky, not the airplane that Donald Trump just received as a gift from Qatar worth $400 million, but this imaginary bridge of relationship with Russia and Putin love nest that he would like to, for some reason, build with Vladimir Putin. I think Putin is frankly, showing signs that he's not as enamored with Donald Trump as Donald Trump is with Putin. But I guess maybe that's how love works. You just don't see certain things.
Mm-hmm. So who's actually winning this chess game? In one word, Putin or Zelenskyy?
I think Ukraine. I think that right now Ukraine is in a better position, and I think that if we're going to look at this as battle of leaders, then whatever Zelenskyy represents is winning, which is Ukraine, and Putin is, I guess, a face of everything that he owns and represents, and that face is kind of shaky. The only thing is, it's like a quote from Vladimir Vysotskyy's song, "Кроме мордобоя никаких чудес," except for the face slapping and just fighting. There's no other miracles, and so that's what Russia's got, and so they're going to use that going forward. Diplomacy, all they can do is show how they're impossible to make deals with, and then they don't follow through. So anytime we talk about negotiations with Russia, in a way, we're kind of admitting we're trying to play Russian game. So in a way, just the mere fact that there's a conversation about negotiations, it's already Russian victory, because we see that this is not what they wanted, as I explained. On the other hand, what Zelenskyy is doing, I think, is in Ukrainian diplomacy, is doing a lot of tactical victories and trying to navigate, and are doing quite a successful job of navigating within these parameters that have been set up for them by Putin and Trump.
If that meeting does happen, how do you think it would play out? Would a face-to-face photo of Zelenskyy and Putin maybe legitimize Putin and his crimes?
I don't know to what extent there's anything that, well, no, there is something. I think if Zelensky nominates Putin and Trump for Nobel Peace Prize, that would be legitimizing Putin and Trump. That would be really, but sometimes wouldn't be surprised if that occurred as well. Because we live in a world where we don't have that America that would say, no, 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 this is too much. Now, wait a minute. This is just, we have actually State Secretary Marco Rubio who attempts to play that part of America and successfully got India and Pakistan to seize their latest military incursions. Basically, it sounds like India and Pakistan were waiting for this COP to show up because all they got was Vice President J.D. Vance who said, hey, if anything happens here, that's none of our business, but to which India apparently decided that this was a sign to go and attack Pakistan. So Marco Rubio shows up and says, hey, slow down. There's still America over here. You're going too far. That's a situation where I think that involvement was welcomed, but that's not going to be the case every time. And not having that America that's going to put up boundaries means that the evil of Russian Empire is going to be continuing to spill out into this, puddle of substance in which a little ship named Ukraine has to swim through. And I think so. That's kind of where we are. So the negotiations itself is a victory for Putin because there's no America that's like with Biden would say, hey, we're just going to militarily help Ukraine to the level that's going to increase the cost of this war to Russia to an unsustainable level, however long it takes. Which is kind of a beautiful vision, but considering we're limited by elections, and policies like this are definitely limited by elections, I think having as long as it takes approach is highly unrealistic. But it still was better than what we have now, which is everyone for themselves, or go talk to Russia, or go talk to China, or go talk to Turkey, or go talk to Donald Trump. In that situation, Ukraine, I think, is just doing the best with what it can, and I think it's been it's easy also important to admit what a pleasant surprise Europe has been, especially those that. Historic, well, I guess the quartet that showed up in Kiev the other day. How impressive is that? And we know that there's actually a second, this could have been a quintet, I feel, where Italian Prime Minister could have joined, but maybe she is being saved as that the connector, the bridge to Trump world that is so crucial to have for Europe. But nonetheless, little ship, Europe is not so little. It's a pretty big ship. There's a lot of people. There's a lot of ideas, and we'll see how all of this plays out. I'm just a little nervous because having, read some history, it would be extremely historically ironic if we saw a war conflict like, a world war like 1, 2, 3, where you would have a replay where Russia would be together, an alliance really with the United States, fighting against Europe. This could be a really ironic twist on history, and perhaps that would be World War III, or perhaps that would be the true conclusion of World War II, which did not end on May 8th, no matter what Donald Trump was to say. That was the end. That was the VE Day, Victory in Europe Day. The World War II ended on September 2nd, 1945, when capitulation of Japan was signed by, Parker Penn. And Parker Penn is, from where? Janesville, Wisconsin.
Okay, now shifting to Trump's role in all this. He first supported the idea of a ceasefire, but after Russia proposed talks in Turkey, he suddenly started pressuring Ukraine. Why such a sharp change in tone?
I think he wants to get it wrapped up. Donald Trump wants this war over yesterday. When he was speaking about 24 hours, that was his desire. He wanted this to be over. If it's his will, which I guess what we're figuring out it's not, then the war would be over in 24 hours. Alas, his will does not control the world as he, I think, imagined himself it does. So he gets frustrated and wants to leave. And before getting entirely leaving, he is seeing what he's got. He's got carrot, he's got stick. Carrot is going for the donkey named Russian Evil Empire, and stick is going for Ukraine. And so Ukraine gets, that's where Ukrainian diplomacy, I feel, has done such a daft job of navigating these tough seas of crap. That they are dealing with by agreeing preemptively and quickly to terms that are set out often by Trump administration so fast that it shows Putin to be slow to react. And he essentially, again, loses the initiative. I think, again, unfortunately for Putin, his ally in the White House is showing just an incredible, uncontrollable sense of greed. And that is an impatience. You know, I'm thinking about that test where a child is supposed to stay in the room with one marshmallow, and if that child didn't eat it in a few minutes, somebody would come in and give him two marshmallows. I don't think Donald Trump ever made it to the second I think he just, I don't think he waited until people left the room. I think he just ate that first marshmallow as soon as he just laid his eyes on it. Because as he said, when you're a celebrity, you can grab anything anywhere. So I think this is just his approach. But it's much easier to grab Ukraine than it is to grab Vladimir Putin. And Trump's attempts to grab or hug or touch Vladimir Putin are going kind of nowhere, because that's how strength works. If you let him have it, then you are not valued very much. But if you don't let him have it, well, then you're a world leader, dictator, somebody that Trump respects and honors and understands. It's a kind of a thing that we used to say, or still say, about the evil Russian Empire, which is they understand strength. And that concept is really can be expanded to people who respect Russia, people who respect Putin. Those are people who respect strength, and that means they understand strength. And Donald Trump, his strength has always historically been to delay, to find a way out, to not to face the consequences. And so I think he has shown a lot of different countries how to walk that path. Because if you can be elected president of the United States while delaying, why shouldn't 90 countries out there delay to make trade deals with the United States? Because if that works for Trump, why can't it work against Trump? And so he finds himself in a difficult situation, while we in the United States might be finding ourselves with empty shelves.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and let's talk trade for a moment. What's the current state of the trade war? Is the tension starting to easy?
I think that Donald Trump walked into a situation he did not anticipate, which is a story of his life. He got himself into a trade war with a country that apparently was like itching for it. And with that on a plate, he found himself totally unprepared. In addition, he found himself, well, I would say, with the population, starting with his base, that is already been raised to be very, very fearful of apocalypse and catastrophes coming, because Trumpist, Republican, conservative propaganda, I don't know, there needs to be a better word for all of this now. Let's say Trumpists, radical, revolutionaries, they're scaring people. And so they were already on the edge. And when Trump came out with this liberation, and now we're like, oh my gosh, there's empty ships coming from China. And you hear these business people who are saying, I hope this ship sinks because I don't have money to pay for what's on the ship to buy it out. Already fearful people are going to panic. And I think that's what we've been demonstrated. And so not just crazy woke liberals who are going, that's not how you do business. That's not how you do math. It's not just them. It's also Trump base that is being hurt by these trade wars and is terrified of the consequences. So I think Trump wanted to end this war, trade war, whatever, with China as well soon. He was thinking 24 hours because it's a nice time for a war or conflict. Kind of get up in the morning, start a war, and then you go to bed. And then, before you go to bed, maybe you go, okay, the war is over. I'm done. It's fine. Good night, everybody. And then you get up in the morning, you start a war again with somebody else. It's a kind of a lifestyle. But it turned out that China again, they were itching for this, evidently, because they sat back and waited. And even though their market, their factories and orders are suffering, but we already are hearing anecdotal evidence from people in Eastern Europe who are saying, wow, there's a lot of Chinese stuff arriving. The selection is great. The price is amazing. What's going on? Welcome to Belarus. So there's an interesting way, where markets will adjust with or without the United States. But it's not good, really, for the United States. And so Donald Trump wanted to end this. And on one hand, he's been saying that he had contact with Chinese without explaining exactly what. And it sounded like maybe they had Chinese takeout, and it stated that they had some contact with Chinese, but without, details. But then they explained that, yesterday, 2 days ago, the news came out that apparently they spoke to China 3 weeks ago in some kind of a beginning of negotiation process. Didn't go very far, evidently, because now we had finally meeting in Geneva, which, unlike all those meetings with Russians, which end in nothing, and State Department, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, what was the first thing he said in Saudi Arabia after the first conversation? We are at the beginning of a very long road. Because it was clear that there was and J.D. Vance even said, we can't even sit down Russians and Ukrainians directly face to face with each other, which is why, it shows how well he is informed, because apparently this is what we're trying to figure out, how this can happen now or not. Remind me your question, Vladislav.
Question about how is it feel American, and maybe we can talk about more details and looking at the broader strategy. Could it be that Trump outplayed everyone, and once this artificial crisis blows over, the US could come out even stronger?
Yes, if by stronger you mean without Chinese things on shelves, with prices way up, with economy in recession, with people generally terrified, with trust lost in the United States. Sure, yes. Otherwise, Donald Trump, he had, I think, a calendar for every day of victories. So if you ask him, he's got no defeats. He's got no problems. He's got nothing to feel bad or regretful about. It's an amazing inability for self-reflection that is never going to go away. It's just built in. It's a factory setting there. It's just set. So important to understand that even as he lost trade war to China, he still feels like he is the winner here. Because why? Because that's how he controls his narrative. It's also a very important lesson in how boldly and brazenly one can control and attempt to control the narrative. He's the winner. Why? Because he said so. Well, I guess then, do you want to argue with him? No, then I guess he's the winner. Yay, winner. And it's a very slippery slope, but interestingly enough, it's very noticeable because this pattern that Donald Trump does here and there with a pretty consistent style is trackable and notable. And then we see, oh, this is how he did with China. And then again, other countries are learning on that example, that Donald Trump was just waiting for the opportunity to surrender. Unlike negotiating with Russians, I guess to go back to point, negotiating with Chinese went very different. Why? Because clearly Donald Trump told them, do not come out of that room without an agreement, or at least when you come out of that room, you say that you have reached an agreement. And after that, we'll figure out what's happening, because that's a way to control the narrative. It's a way to build this reality in which everything is you got under control, and then, well, it's your word against Chinese word. Maybe Chinese are going to say, well, we don't have an agreement. Doesn't matter. Who you're going to believe? You're going to believe your own administration or some strange foreign person that says whatever, who cares, in some strange language. So we have this situation that is leading us into nowhere, and Donald Trump is always going to consider himself to be a winner. And if you believe in Donald Trump and you don't see how he is the winner, I guess you just need to believe a little stronger, a little more, and give him, very important, give him a little bit more time. Because, if we don't see the genius, the stable genius of Donald Trump by now, well, let's just give him a little more time.
Thanks a lot, Yuri. Great talking to you, and I hope to have you back soon.
Anytime. Thank you.